Hey everybody, Garcia here, and today I'm taking a look at the expansion to Heaven and Ale. This is Kegs and More. In this expansion, besides doing everything you're doing in the base game, you are now also going to be loading up your cart with kegs and delivering those to different taverns along the way. You're going to be making loops with that cart of yours, loading it up, dropping them off, trying to make victory points. It's basically another way to make victory points. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how this works. I'm not explaining the base game. I'm just showing you how this incorporates into that, what it's going to do in the game, and then after that, I'll tell you what I think of it. Here we go. So here we've got the central board set up the same way it normally is with a couple of changes. You have a couple of new bonus barrels here. This one being 3 kegs delivered to the same tavern. I'll come back to that. And then we have this die that is going to be rolled and placed a number of spaces ahead equal to the pip, so 1, 2. And then we're going to divvy out onto the board using the same number here for spacing 4 kegs, which are these here. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then 4 bales of hay after that. And again, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 2 going around. If the number was 4 instead, you of course would leave a gap of 4. It's possible that it'll just loop back around and keep placing things out. So you do that at the very beginning of the game, and then you seed a new 4 kegs and 4 bales each new round, all right? Every player is going to have a sideboard over here on which you are going to place this little wagon. You are also going to begin with 1 keg and 1 bale of hay, and your cart will begin up here. You will set these tokens out however you want, in whichever setup you want, and you are going to earn them when you complete, of course, surrounding one of these locations. And before you put a tile on it, you will get this bonus. We'll come back to that in 1 second. So what are you doing with the expansion here? Well, you are gathering your kegs at the monastery. You are driving around on your cart. You are going to these 3 taverns and you are dropping off those kegs. When you make it to this first one, you are going to drop off 1 keg if one is loaded, at least 1. So you drop off exactly 1. At the next one, if you still have any kegs left, you'll drop off exactly 1. And at the last tavern, if you have any left, you will drop off the rest of them. And they will be worth 3, 4, and 8 victory points, respectively. Okay? And then from here, you'll make it back around to that forest there, a little wooded area, back to the monastery, possibly load again, and so on. When you load in this game, when you hit the monastery and choose to continue, you may load as many kegs as you'd like. For each one you load, you have to eat 1 bale of hay. You have to feed that to your horses so they will pull the cart. So that is the general thing going on. Just going around this thing a few times per game, basically. Now, the tiles out here are going to give you a few different bonuses. This one is going to give you 1 keg and 1 bale of hay. But, just like all the other ones, if you choose not to take that, you can simply flip it over and have more storage space up here where you can keep things. They all work this way. These are going to allow you to move immediately up 4 or 6 steps. These are going to modify the values of these taverns to the new values. And then these 2 over here are going to allow you to move more when you claim the die. So let's talk about this Carter die and movement. When you land on it, you may, besides anything else you may normally do on that space, you may choose to use the Carter die. You're going to move ahead a number as indicated on the pips, 1, 2. Again, I would load perhaps before I move, like so, 1, 2. Come on, there you go. This is spent. And then I'm going to take the die and re-roll it, and I'm going to put it as many spaces ahead of myself as the pips. So 1 would go there. If I had rolled a 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it would go there. All right. The next player who takes it will do the same thing. And the number, of course, again, being modified by one of these if I take it. Once I surround this location, I'll likely keep that. I'll put it over here. And then if I'm the next one to take it, now I move 1 plus 3, I'll move 4 spaces, okay? So everything else is largely the same. You're gathering these things, hoping to store them. You do have one spot here you may rent, which is going to cost you 4 coins. Ideally, you don't want to have to use that, but you might have to. And you are just making loops and delivering those goods. You are going to be making a lot of points from this board, likely. Again, assuming you make this one, that's now 6 points for every barrel there. One of these bonuses is for having 3 barrels in the same tavern, likely the first one, so that's, 18 points, possibly, plus the 4 maybe if you make that. So a lot of points do come from this board, likely anyway. So there is that, some of the bonuses. Everything else is pretty much the same. You have new considerations now of where you stop and why you do it. Not everything is compulsory. You may, for example, stop here, not buy the tile, and just take the barrel, the keg. You might buy the tile and not take the keg. As long as you are doing something there, you're allowed to stop there. Which is different from the usual rules where you couldn't stop there unless you were purchasing a tile or scoring a token. Now, if this is here, I could choose just to stop there and take the keg and not score. That's pretty much that. The endgame scoring over here will be the numbers and the amount delivered. Every one barrel up here is half a point. And then if you end up somewhere at one of these locations with some barrels loaded up, let's say I had 2 loaded up in there, and I end up, at this location here, well, each one's worth 2 victory points. If I end up at one of the trees, they're worth nothing, unfortunately. Just like there, 1, 1, and then 2s, and eventually really juicy points. So there you go. That should give you an idea of what's going on here. Like I said, I want to mention again, you get a lot of points from here. I'm going to talk about that in my overviews because I think it's a big part of what's happening and what I think of the expansion. Let's go back up top. Let me give you those final thoughts. All right, that is Heaven and Ale, Kegs and More. I have to say, Heaven and Ale for me is a fairly recent discovery, but I've enjoyed it a lot. I think it's a great game. I'm rating it like a 8, 8.5, something like that. I really like it. The expansion here I was certainly excited about, but as it turns out, I'm quite disappointed in it. I found that it is, just not very fun, and I'll try to articulate why. So, I'll start with the one thing really that I really liked, and that is the thematic ties in this are cool. The idea that in the original game, you are, for some reason, monks making, gathering the ingredients to make ale. It's weird, but fine. That's the theme. That's the setting. This expansion, thematically speaking, is seamless. The idea that, okay, you're making it, now you're loading it up and delivering it to these different places along the road, coming back home to the monastery, loading up some more, going out and delivering it. So that works. That's kind of a weird thing to focus on when it comes to a sort of themeless Euro game, but, props where props are due. All right, the rest of the stuff, the aesthetics. The cart is really lame. I don't like the way that looks. I think the whole thing is just sort of more of the same, which isn't bad, but nothing splashy is in this box. It's a big box that you're getting largely empty. Let me show you here. So here's what you're getting in there. That's basically all the materials and that. So it's a big empty box, largely. That's, and they give you that, which is really lame. So yeah, the sort of aesthetics are a little iffy. I don't like the card is so big on the board. It kind of covers up where you are also. It doesn't look good. All right, the replayability is... I'm giving this a negative, and that's because I feel, and this is my big issue really at the end of the day here, this expansion does not feel like it revitalizes the base game. It's not the kind of expansion that you've played the base game a lot, and you're thinking, I'd love to get that back to the table. I enjoyed the way that played. I want to add something to sort of bring it back to life and play that again. This doesn't do that. This doesn't revitalize the base game. It kind of hijacks it. It feels like the game is now about this. it almost feels, to me, when I played it, it felt like this was the base game, and everything you were doing in the old game, was an expansion to feed this. You are getting so many points from doing this that it kind of takes over. You can't really ignore it. So I don't like that. I think if you enjoyed the base game and you want a little something extra, this might not be for you. You might not like the new normal when you combine these two things. The game length, it's about the same. There's a little more setup at the beginning of each round, no big deal. Ease of play, it's not hard to grasp, this expansion rather. It's not hard to grasp, but it does lose a little bit of the original's clarity. That simplicity, that elegance, a little bit of that is going to go away in this. Not too much, and again, it kind of takes over, so it's about this kind of, it's about these mechanisms now, it's about these manipulations, but I think it loses some clarity. And then lastly, tactics and strategy and luck. Again, it's not that it feels like an expansion. It does not. It feels like this is now what the game's about, and it's not that fun. This is one expansion that for me, maybe also for you, it is clearly worse, the game, with the expansion included, than just leaving it out. It's not even that, today I feel like changing up the flavor of the game. No, it just is worse for me. I think it pulls focus too much. It becomes about something that isn't that interesting. Maybe if it was a very small side effect that you could add in or not, maybe. It's not that interesting anyway, going around the circle dropping stuff off, but maybe. But as it is, where it's about that or else, it's just not that engaging to me. So that's how I feel about it. I don't like it. I don't really like it. I am not going to recommend it. I think just honestly stick with the base game. The base game is really good. It's solid. It's clean, clever. This is, I would argue, none of those things. So this is going to get, my bottom line here is going to get a 4 out of 10 from me. Stick with the base game, folks. It's plenty good. This is not an expansion I think anybody really needs. So there you go. That's it from me. I'm Z Garcia. I'll see you on the next one.